Hey, welcome back to another Black City Coffee vlog. In this video, Happy New Year. Was terribly sick over the holiday, so that was Christmas and New Year's, and honestly up until like yesterday. So I'm glad to be back in the land of the living. Okay, so I shared some of my lessons for 2023. One of them was, for me, simplifying is deep think, whereas complicating is overthink. I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of how have I been able to simplify the massive knowledge that I've been able to, I guess, accrue in the 4 years that I've been roasting coffee. And I've discovered that I'm not a person who likes more gadgetry, more shiny new things. In fact, it pisses me off, honestly, seeing the next new shiny gadget, even though, yeah, the cool factor comes in. Oh, that's cool. And that lasts about 2 seconds. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in a theory that we have distilled down from a very complicated thing, which is roasting. And even saying that seems kind of silly because who makes it complicated? The user. People have been just turning green coffee into brown coffee, roasting it, since the dawn of time, apparently, in Ethiopia. And so we find new ways to complicate it and therefore judge it more harshly than maybe is even needed. And in the world of specialty coffee, it's too easy to do that. And I think time and place. For a hobbyist like myself, I didn't want to get into a slippery slope of overthinking something and overcomplicating it, especially if I am not wise to the position that I'm in. Now, it doesn't mean that I be lazy about what I do, or I don't investigate, or I feed my curiosity about coffee. Rather, yes, to all of that. But I think it's far more impressive if I can deeply think about the subject of coffee and how best to source and roast and give that to my customer, and then communicate that to my customer to help them, with their decisions as they buy coffee from me and as they so choose. If I'm so lucky to get people to buy coffee from me, how can I simplify that instead of overcomplicating it? Which, if I'm reflecting back on, I definitely did that in the beginning. I definitely overcomplicated. I definitely overthought about things. So now, as I'm kind of coming into 2024 and having some time to reflect and just turn my brain back on, honestly, from all the flu, I'm trying to simplify things, not discounting the fact that I'm trying to think more in depth about it to simplify it versus overthinking and sort of stretching myself thin and sort of thinking about and cluttering my mind with things that don't matter. Okay. And I had a really visceral experience with this the other day when my RoastPath was not working for some reason, and it was simply just because my computer needed to be restarted. It's always the simplest solution. But I had to roast basically on instinct alone. And so that right there, having to roast coffee for a customer, and I didn't have access to my technology, and this has happened a handful of times before, but I didn't freak out. I didn't freak out because I know how to roast coffee, and I think the point of this video today is to, tell you that I'm trying to simplify things, and I want to present that in the channel, and I'm hoping that more of you take on that perspective, trying to simplify your own systems, your own maybe perspectives. That way you can communicate that to your customer, because really, I think that's what it's all about. If we want to share this more, if we want people to be as excited as we are, we have to find ways of simplifying this very crazy, passionate thing that's going on in our brain, and not scare people off with that, and instead, how do we simplify that, and build that bridge, and cross that bridge even quicker together, okay? So that's kind of what I've been pondering over the last week and a half or so without making any content. And I just had it. Still have the brain fog. Dang it. I had a simplified point to say, and now I can't think of it. I'll think of it again. It'll probably pop up somewhere else. But anyway, okay. So we're here at RoastPath, and I want to show you my proof of how crazy I had overcomplicated my life. So this is what my RoastPath looks like right now. And I think later on when I get to roasting it again, I have a little bit more data behind here that is more current, and I'm actually documenting my batch size. I'll come back in here and do a little bit more official, sort of like what am I doing in RoastPath these days. But I just wanted to show, this sort of like journey from overthinking something, overcomplicating something, and coming down to what is now my essential working mode. And while, software and technology is there to help us, I think that was my point, where it was just like, yeah, there's technology, there's numbers, there's roast curves, there's finishing temps, there's all kinds of things like that, lest we forget how to just roast the dang thing. And because we have the data and experience of just us tasting and looking and smelling, timing, innate timing of things as a roaster, because we've put, the work behind the roaster, we shouldn't forget about those skills too. So those innate sort of qualitative skills that I know you've been building these past couple of years, or no matter what machine that you've been working on, you've been building a relationship with you and the coffee and the machine that you work with. There's been a relationship building there. Okay, so when technology fails on you, which it will happen, okay, don't freak out. Remember your skills, remember your senses, roast with your senses. And for the most part, I don't think it's a life or death situation where you need to know the exact this and that, Granted, bar like competition and judging and all that other stuff that is sort of like outside of this conversation, okay? So, yeah, that was my point. Okay, cool. I'm glad. All right, so I wanted to show you how my coffees are set up in RoastPath. So RoastPath, if you didn't know, this is my roasting software that I use with my Mill City Roaster. Mill City Roasters is the maker and developer of this software. So it's all made in-house. That's really nice. I was part of the beta team that came in for a number of years, testing, and now they are up and running. So you can find RoastPath in the description there, in the link that everything I use, right? I have this page called Links to Everything I Use. You can find this in there, and this is how I set this up. So in the dashboard, very simple, looks like this. Haven't roasted all this past week, even though I did roast this past week, but like I said, my computer failed. So that roast is not in here. Okay, coffees. So how it'll work is I got my greens, and I have active greens and I have non-active greens. So the ones that you see here that are black, those are active, okay? So here's my coffees, and this is basically where I operate when I have my 4 coffees that are in rotation for the most part. And like I said in one of my little posts or whatever, I offer a light, a medium, and a dark. I find seasonal coffees to fulfill that, and then I have a decaf offering. And I feel like that just covers all my bases. Anyone from, the more acid head coffee drinkers that are like me, and then my nostalgic coffee drinkers that like dark coffees and, things that just aren't that innovative, right? So I get to cover all those bases, and then my decaf, of course. So I've played a lot with this, and if we're talking about simplifying and deeply thinking about what you need in terms of your systems, because you could do whatever you want, honestly. So, when you create a new coffee, and this is basically saying you've already entered in your greens, right? So you got your greens here and stuff. You can do a pre-roast blend or a single origin. So for example, my Tiger Claw is a pre-roast blend, and I will have that as a pre-roast blend, and you could add your greens and all that stuff. And project, I think what you can put in project is like, maybe it's like, I've played with this too, which is like, okay, Tiger Claw version 1, or Tiger Claw, like if you really got down to it, spring season, summer season, fall season, right? Because coffee is what? Seasonal. Okay. So you can kind of give yourself some notes there, then you can give yourself notes there. I like to put like my charge temps in here because there's a discrepancy in the charge, which I'll show you in a second. You put your name right there. Okay, so let me just break down what I got right here. So we've got a dark roast honey pot, and I go back and forth. I'm, overthinking and complicating it, but I use light, medium, dark verbiage, and then I'll also use city, full city. I don't use French or Vienna or anything like that. What's the dark term for when we start talking about city, full city? I forget now. So I'm all over the place with it, just like many roasters, but I got my roaster's choice. I got my 99 medium. I don't really like this sort of nomenclature. So what I've come to like, and in terms of simplifying, I have the roast level. Now I can do full city, I can do full city plus or whatever. And these are all personal. You can name these whatever you like. I have a separator, and then I have the origin. And then sometimes, I come across different types of, processes, even though the origin is the same. So I can denote that here. Or I can straight up go dark honey pot. And honey pot, I know for me, which is a short term, and that's my decaf. Okay. And the thing is, I'm always going to call it honey pot if it's from this particular origin, which is, I think it's Honduras. So this is really not a how-to, this is a how-I. And you can just see from a glance what kind of nomenclature you guys would like to do. I like light, separator, honey pot. Light plus, separator, berry treasure. And I'm not completely sold on this being the best way of doing it. But I think as long as I don't keep too many greens, I won't confuse myself. Okay, so this is basically where I operate. I'm trying to make it even more simplified as it goes on. So I'll just use this for like this full city plus / plus Mr. Coto, Guatemala, San Marcos. And I was trying new things, and I was going with, just the country of origin. But it turns out, I think you definitely need to include at some point in your nomenclature on these coffees, the roast level. Because you're going to have a different profile for a dark roasted whatever, and a medium roasted whatever, and a light roasted whatever. Okay, so I'm leaning towards that way. A lot of times what's happening here is a sort of like this ends up looking like my desk, which is just like full of crap after only a couple days. And there's a method to the madness, but I'm just not a very like put things back exactly where I found it. I'm not like that. I'm actually kind of messy. And so I'm trying to simplify it, especially in, a software like this. Okay, so you can see my mess, and I hopefully inspires you not to be messy. But if you're also messy like me, like, hey, I'm right there with you. 46, this is my first roast ever. This is so cool. On April 16th, 2020, that is recorded here, 2020, during the pandemic. And if we click into here, it's Honduras from La Paz. A lot of people were roasting this coffee at this time. Look at this roast curve. We had a dry at 5, a long middle, and a properly long third phase. And here are the notes. First batch was a wash. Couldn't use it. Well, that's what it is. So, I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool to just see the first roast ever. Okay, well, there you go, my little spiel. Nothing too crazy with this one. I would urge you to deeply think about all those little things in coffee, which there's too many to name right now. But I would urge you to simplify it, and that way, when things don't work out or you're running into some kind of a problem or issue, it's not also, it's a simplified method to fix. If we've taken the time to simplify something that is quite complicated, but we've taken the time to sort of systematically pull this thing apart and say, let's simplify it. When something goes wrong, which it will, right, we have a more simplified method of solution versus if we have this very complicated thing, things are everywhere. I have to do this special thing to do this special thing to do this special thing. And now when we run into an issue, it's much more complicated to fix. Food for thought. All right. We will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.